on Our Baltimore, Plan Our Baltimore. This is an informational meeting only. The commission will be taking any and all public input that people have on the plan. And obviously, the goal is to see if anything needs to change before the commission comes back on October 10th and has formal action on this to put it back into the City Council's court. So we have Sarah Paranellum, who has led this effort. Thank you very much for your incredible work. Well, I think is going to give us a presentation, and then we're going to open it up for public comment, correct? Or am I wrong on that?
You are absolutely right.
Wow, that's never happened before, so let's mark this date. All right, Sarah. Oh, wait a second. Before we begin, Eric Tiso has a couple of recognitions, I should say.
Yep. Good afternoon. Just wanted to introduce 2 of 3 new employees that you'll be seeing that are going to be on the land use and urban design team. We have Austin Davis, a returning alumni from the department, who'll be managing the subdivision process, and immediately behind him is Brandon Canoy, who'll be taking over site plan review, among other things. And then Justin Walker will be joining us on Monday if everything lines up, and we'll introduce him to you at the meeting on the 10th. So thank you.
Welcome back. Welcome. We look forward to working with you in the many years ahead, I hope. All right, Sarah.
All right.
The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. So very excited to be presenting the comprehensive plan today. As the chair mentioned, we are doing a presentation today for the comprehensive plan, and then we'll be returning on October 10th for a vote. The legislation was introduced to City Council on September 16th, and the full plan is available online if anyone wants to look at the full plan, but this should give a very thorough presentation. This will be familiar largely to the commissioners. This is very similar to the presentation on May 30th when we released the draft plan, but I will highlight some of the updates that we made. We received over 2,000 comments on the draft, and we were very diligent in reviewing those and made hundreds of changes, both large and small. So we'll highlight some of those for you today. So just to start at the beginning, what is Our Baltimore and why is it important? This is the first comprehensive plan since 2006, and the focus of this plan is on the spaces, places, and neighborhoods that make Baltimore home. And although we call this a comprehensive plan, it really is not about every topic. It's really focused on physical development, but we recognize that the physical development of the city is very much interconnected to how people live their lives, social issues, cultural issues, economic issues, and so we do include, some of those as well as they address the physical development of the city. This is a requirement that every jurisdiction in the state is completing or has recently completed to create a 10-year comprehensive plan following the decennial census or to update an existing plan. So the plan is required to be submitted to the State Department of Planning for review, and we did submit our plan to the state and received comments back from the Department of Planning as well as several other state agencies and have incorporated changes that they suggested, and you'll see some of those. In addition to the state requirement, the city charter requires the Planning Commission to adopt and revise a master plan, and so this meets that requirement as well. The focus of this plan is really on guiding equitable neighborhood development over the next 10 years and beyond, and thinking about how do we retain and support residents? How do we make Baltimore a place that's inviting for people to want to stay, and not just to stay out of obligation or because they don't have choices, but really because they benefit from staying, and then are so excited that they want to invite others to be in Baltimore. The foundation for this comprehensive plan, we weren't starting from scratch in creating this comprehensive plan. We're building off of existing and new plans that are happening across the city, both agency plans for different topics as well as geographic plans for different neighborhoods. We're building off of the information from the 2020 census that serves as information that that supports the development of the recommendations in the plan. We're building off of the mayor's pillars and the action plan that was completed by the administration. And then we did a lot of community engagement throughout the planning process to inform the recommendations that you'll see today. So I'm going to just walk you through the plan, basically section by section. And so we'll start with the introduction, and you'll see these different sections in the plan itself. So we've included in the plan a guide to help readers understand what the plan is and isn't, to really help set expectations about, how to use the plan and what it includes. So for example, the plan provides a vision to inform future land uses, but it does not actually implement any rezonings. It doesn't change land uses. It provides the vision for future land use. The plan provides a menu of potential policy recommendations, and it indicates the level of resources needed to implement those policy changes, but it doesn't make policy changes directly. It doesn't commit city resources to specific policy changes. We expect that different people will use the plan in different ways, and so the plan speaks to residents, the plan speaks to the real estate community, and the plan speaks to city agencies. For example, for residents, the plan highlights opportunities to improve conditions in neighborhoods through policy changes, and it can serve as an advocacy tool. So people can use the plan to advocate for policies that are included in it, whether that's at the city government level or the state level or even the federal level. For the real estate community, the plan highlights development opportunities. So we have opportunities that are highlighted for new construction, new residential construction. We have opportunities that are highlighted for transit-oriented development, for major investment around the city. So we've highlighted these different opportunities and hope that the plan will guide future real estate decision-making. And then for the city, the plan really will guide, as I mentioned, future land use decisions, as well as policy recommendations on all of the topics that are included in the plan. So we are concluding kind of a multi-phase planning process that's really been very iterative. So we started the planning process with a listening phase, listening to residents to hear what they were interested in, what their vision was, what topics were of most interest, and then building off of that and developing the rest of the plan kind of as we heard from people making adjustments. So just to get into a little bit more detail about the listening phase, as we developed the engagement process, we knew it was very important to conduct different methods of outreach to reach different audiences. So we knew that there were audiences who would attend an open house that was sponsored by the planning department. We made sure that we had open houses around the city that were convenient for people to attend. We knew that there were many residents who maybe wouldn't come out to an open house, and so we wanted to find other ways to reach those residents. So we worked with engagement partners, different nonprofit organizations and community-based organizations around the city so that they could reach the people that they work with on a daily basis and engage them on the planning process. We, at every stage of the planning process, had an online option so that people who could, didn't want to participate in person, maybe that wasn't convenient for them, would have an opportunity to participate online. As we moved into the fall and winter of 2022 and 2023, we went from a listening phase into a phase of creating content for the plan and brainstorming recommendations. So we held work sessions in every planning district. We held work sessions with topic experts. So we had residents identify for us what were the priority topics for the plan, and we engaged with people who had expertise on those different topics. We held a community conference where all of the topics would be talked about at once so that we had opportunities for crossover as people were interested in different topics and thinking about how they related to each other. And then again, we had options for online participation in this phase as well. And then as we moved into the drafting and reviewing phase, the different sections of the plan began to emerge. So we didn't go into this with an exact idea of kind of what would be the sections of the plan. That was really based on the community engagement that we conducted. And what emerged as the three sections for the plan is one section related to planning for retention and growth, one section that was focused on policy recommendations. We have 17 different policy topics that we dive into in the plan, and then one section that is more geographically focused, thinking about plans that are shaping the city in different parts of the city. As a framework for the entire plan, we really wanted to think about equity and think about the different elements of equity. So we're thinking about structural equity, procedural equity, distributional equity, and transgenerational equity in terms of both the process of planning, how are we reaching out to people, how are we including people, as well as in terms of the content of the plan, the recommendations that are included in the plan, the information that's provided within the plan. In addition to having that equity framework, we wanted to have a regional framework for the entire plan. So we didn't want to just have kind of one section that was thinking about the region, but really understanding that Baltimore is at the center of the entire region, that our fate is very much tied to our neighbors, and that our neighbors' fate is very much tied to ours. And so thinking about these topics and how they don't stop at the city borders, but really transcend across the region. And then lastly, in terms of the introduction, the very first meeting that we held with our community engagement partners, the topic of implementation and accountability was raised. And so we've been thinking about that from the beginning, thinking about annual reporting and public forums, transparency platforms, kind of how do we keep this planning process going, keep people engaged in the planning process, and keep agencies engaged in implementation even after the plan is adopted. So the next section of the plan really focuses on the history of Baltimore, as well as providing some data about Baltimore today, so that as we're thinking about the future, we're really being informed by both our past and our present. So we have just a brief history within the plan, and these are some of the topics that we include. So we're looking at how the city has grown over time through annexation, looking at some of the patterns of population flight, looking at how racism has affected planning within Baltimore, and how the car has impacted the development of the city. We explore census data as well as other data about population trends within the plan, but we also include data about demographics, about employment, about transportation, because each of understanding kind of what is happening today will help us create the best recommendations for how to address each of these topics in the future. So with that framework, the next section of the plan is focused on two primary questions. Where and how is the city investing in neighborhoods to support existing residents? And what are the opportunities for growth? And so that's what we cover in this growth and retention section of the plan.
Sarah, hang on, we're going to swap so people at home can see the slides.
We want to make sure everyone has a chance to see the slides, so just bear with us.
Should be good.
Do we want to keep those on the screen?
Sorry.
All right. So we're going to start with that first question, which was where and how is the city investing in existing residents? And go forward one. And really the answer is that the city is investing in all neighborhoods using analysis of the city's housing market. And that investment is tailored to the different strategies that are needed in each neighborhood based on the housing market. So the housing market typology classifies as neighborhoods based on housing market characteristics, and then we target different strategies to those neighborhoods. So for example, emergency demolition occurs throughout the city as needed, but whole block demolition is really focused in the neighborhoods that have the weaker housing markets. So that's kind of one example, and then they're all listed within the plan, different strategies and how they're targeted according to the housing market typology. The plan also, the housing market typology helps us identify middle neighborhoods, working class and middle income neighborhoods where the housing market is vulnerable to decline. And the city has established a toolkit for these neighborhoods, strategies that are specifically aimed at helping homeowners, renters, and communities to support existing residents in those neighborhoods. So those include home improvement loans, tax credits targeted to legacy homeowners, rehab loans for landlords, and so that's one of the elements included in this section of the plan. The community development framework is another element here. The city is undertaking block by block planning and intervention efforts in low-income neighborhoods that are poised for growth. You can see the impact investment areas highlighted in yellow on the map on the left. And this is from the 2018 Community Development Framework that was prepared by the Department of Housing and Community Development. The department is now launching a comprehensive housing plan. They, I think, just had their first community meeting earlier this week. And so there will be updated strategies for housing, and I think particularly with a focus on affordable housing. The plan also speaks to the vacant housing strategy that the Department of Housing and Community Development is leading, focused on reducing the number of vacant houses by allocating $3 billion to the mayor's vacant housing strategy. And then Baltimore Green Network. The city is implementing a multi-pronged effort to increase open space and connectivity to improve neighborhood quality of life. And so the Baltimore Green Network really focuses on those open spaces and that connectivity and providing assets in neighborhoods that help people improve the quality of life and want to continue to stay in Baltimore. You see here two pilot projects, Rachel Wilson Park and Cab Calloway Legends Park, that are part of the Green Network. So as we shift to thinking about where are the opportunities for growth, one of the first things we want to look at is the proposed land use map. The land use map really provides a guide for future growth and identifies locations where higher density is encouraged, where there are opportunities for new development. So you can see here that we're really looking at a proposed land use map in terms of kind of the broader categories of land use. We're not getting into the specific categories that you might see on a zoning map, but really thinking kind of at a general level, where do we want to see lower density residential? Where do we want to see higher density residential? For the most part, the city's future land use is going to look a lot like our current land use. Baltimore is mostly built out, but there are opportunities both for growth and for change. And so we're highlighting where those opportunities are through the land use map. So some of those opportunities for change are highlighted here. One of the biggest ones is our transit-oriented development opportunities. We have existing transit opportunities around existing both rail lines and some of our bus lines, as well as obviously the proposed red line with some new opportunities in the future for transit-oriented development. We think that there's a lot of potential there that has gone untapped. We also wanted to focus in the proposed land use map on the areas where industrial uses are adjacent to residential uses, and thinking about kind of where should those lines be, and where can residential continue to grow into maybe what was formerly industrial areas and where do we want to preserve existing industrial areas. The land use map also speaks to opportunities for creative reuse of buildings. So, for example, we have schools that have been surplused in the last decade, and they are large buildings in residential neighborhoods, and we have opportunities to think about creative use of those, and we need to think about what the appropriate land use is for those sites. So this is one of the new additions to the comprehensive plan based on the feedback that we got on the draft, was to really provide kind of a clear map and guide for where do we want to see growth over the next decade, and really highlight for the real estate community and for the community at large, kind of what are those opportunities, understanding that the land use map provides kind of the guide for future rezoning, but that this provides kind of a high level. Then Director, sure, jump in.
Yeah, I was going to add something here. Like this, a 3 or 4 year process, we learned a lot in the process. At the beginning of the process, the obvious candidates for growth areas were the HCD impact investment areas. But halfway through the process, the red line was announced, and HCD announced their vacant house initiative, using a new legal tool to acquire vacant properties. That seemed to be a game changer. And so along with the agenda of supporting the state's investment in transit, this is really a 10-year look ahead at what our growth strategy might look like in 10 years when this red line is completed. Mm-hmm. We changed in the middle of everything, really, we updated ourselves, I think.
So you'll see, as the director mentioned, the impact investment area is highlighted here in yellow. So those are one of the opportunities for growth over the next 10 years. We also have highlighted in the red circles the future red line and the opportunities for development around the red line. And then in purple, we have our existing transit stations, both rail as well as some of our bus corridors, particularly ones that have heavy ridership and infrastructure investments that have either recently occurred or that are being planned. So you'll see the York Road corridor, the North Avenue corridor, for example. And then we've also highlighted our pedestrian-oriented commercial areas. We think these are another opportunity for increased development and increased density across the city. So the comprehensive plan is updated on a 10-year cycle, but we know that the land use map will need to be updated more frequently than that to stay current and to inform rezonings in a practical way. And so what we're proposing through the plan is that the land use map will have a comprehensive review and update on a 4-year cycle. And then it may be reviewed and updated based on neighborhood plans, as those are completed as well. And then the zoning map would be updated on an annual basis. We would do a comprehensive rezoning, have an opportunity for property owners to request rezoning changes, trying to concentrate those really in an annual cycle so that we're looking at them in context with one another rather than as individual requests in an ad hoc manner. So that's what's proposed in terms of the schedule for updating these. As an overlay to the land use map, we have also identified the transit-oriented development opportunities. So we know we've talked already about one of the greatest opportunities for growth in coming years being along the red line and along our transit corridors, and that these are underutilized currently. And so we have an opportunity through these transit-oriented development opportunity sites that we've identified, zones that we've identified for property owners to request TOD zoning instead of what is proposed on the land use map. So there's an opportunity to pursue either a zoning that's in concert with the land use map or a zoning category in concert with the TOD map. Thinking about new residential development opportunities, we have identified that there is demand for new residential construction throughout the city, and also that there is land available to build upon throughout the city. So I mentioned earlier that Baltimore is largely built out, and while that's true, there are still plenty of opportunities for development. So often people think only those opportunities only exist in the suburbs, but that's really not true. Live Baltimore had an analysis conducted, an analysis of Baltimore City's residential market potential completed by Zimmerman Voke and Associates that identified that between 7,300 and 7,100 households would rent or buy new or significantly renovated homes each year over a 5-year period. And this analysis was completed in 2020, in addition to those households renting or buying currently existing units. So we're highlighting this opportunity for new development in the plan. Again, one of the purposes of the plan is to guide future real estate decision making. So the next section of the plan is focused on policy recommendations, and we look at those policy recommendations in 4 themes. We look at livable places, equitable access, healthy communities, and inclusive economy. And here's a list of the different topics that are included in the plan. For each of these policy topic areas, the plan includes an overview, and that overview provides definition of key terms. It provides data and background about the topic so that we're all talking about the same thing. We have information about the topic. It includes information about why addressing the topic is important. Often that feels obvious, but it's really helpful to all be thinking about this using kind of common language and common reasons. And then we've highlighted current efforts that are going on. For each of these topics, we're not starting from scratch. So there's a lot that's already going on across the city to address these various different policy topics. And then we've highlighted some resources if people want to dig deeper into the topic. One of the changes that we've made in this update to the plan is that we have focused on the goals and really thinking through kind of providing a summary of how to achieve the goals in the main body of the plan. And then the list of recommendations is included in the appendix. So we really want to focus people kind of high level on the goals around each of these policy topics. We've also added measures, some highlighted measures for each of these policy topics so that we can track how we're doing over time. And then the final large policy, content section for the plan is plans shaping the city. And this is the section that is geographically focused. So we talk here about city managed plans. The Baltimore City Planning Commission is responsible for preparing and updating plans showing the physical development of the city. And this mandate is met through a variety of city initiatives and plans. And so you have some of them listed here. I will wait.
There he is.
Thank you. So Inspire is one of the planning processes that the planning department leads. We have plans around the 21st century schools supporting that initiative, and it focuses on the quarter mile surrounding each of those schools. We also have the Links Initiative, which is an interagency partnership focused on revitalizing key corridors, commercial corridors in the city. In addition to city-managed plans that are led by the Department of Planning, we also have community-managed plans. So many communities initiate their own planning processes, and in these cases, the Planning Department really serves in an advisory role. And we have guidance for how communities can have their plans recognized by the Planning Commission and receive an acceptance letter for their plans. And you can see that across the city, we have many accepted and adopted plans. These are more than 50 plans that have been either accepted or adopted since the last comprehensive plan in 2006. The plan features a few of these plans in more detail. So we feature both the Inspire planning process and the Greenway Trails planning process in more detail. So far for Inspire, 14 plans have been adopted by the Planning Commission and 9 more are expected to be completed in the next couple of years. And Greenway Trails envisions a holistic citywide system of green nodes, the centerpiece of which is a 35-mile loop that will integrate Baltimore's existing trails and connect new segments. The plan also features some other planning processes around the city. So we have information for each of these planning processes about providing an overview of the plan, the scope of the plan, the status. We provide key highlights and additional resources, again, if people want to dive deeper and learn more about them. I'm just going to briefly highlight 2 of them today. One of them is downtown, which is a obviously critical geographic area of the city and the economic heart of the city, the fastest growing residential neighborhood, and has been seeing some unprecedented investment. And so the downtown section of the comp plan builds off of recommendations received and reviewed by the public during a charrette that was hosted by the Department of Planning and by AIA Baltimore. And planning staff created visuals based on those recommendations that are being used for the 10-year vision for Downtown Rise. And then I also wanted to highlight Reconnecting West Baltimore. So the West Baltimore United Project is a collaborative effort between Department of Transportation, Department of Planning, Baltimore Development Corporation, and the Maryland Transit Administration, and it's really to advance long overdue improvements in West Baltimore where the neighborhoods have been divided for over 50 years. The project was awarded a $2 million federal planning grant to study future scenarios and is in the early planning process. And then in addition, we highlight within the plan the impact investment area strategies. So we have information about the status of each one of the impact investment areas. And then finally, in the plan, we have a growing list of appendices. And these are actually really important. So you can't stop at the end of the plan. You have to keep going and look at the appendices because within the appendices is where we have the detailed policy recommendations. So for each of those 17 policy topics that I mentioned, we have a list of recommendations. They're organized by goal, and the recommendations are identified as either being able to be implemented with existing resources, and you'll see the pencil icon, requiring some additional resources, and you'll see the little money bag, or some really big ideas, some of which are already happening and some of which are for inspiration for the future, and you'll see the light bulb there. We've also identified in the recommendations where there's crossover between the recommendations because there's so much crossover between these recommendations. So Just quickly, here are some examples of some of the recommendations. I pulled out kind of one for each of the topics here. And you can see here how they are very much interrelated. So as we think about affordable housing, we want to be thinking about prioritizing opportunities for affordable units near our transit stations. And then obviously, that's a recommendation that has a big impact on the transportation equity section as well. Here are some sample recommendations for equitable access. So we know that digital access is very important. We're not just thinking about physical access in terms of transportation equity. Obviously, that's very important, but we're also thinking about access to digital opportunities, thinking about food access, and also thinking about access to our parks and open space. And I think experiencing COVID made people even more eager to talk about access to parks and open space, because that became kind of the living room, during COVID. That's where people could gather. We include in the plan healthy communities. One of the things that we heard from people early on when we asked what topics were important to people was neighborhood cleanliness. And this wasn't kind of a traditional topic that we would have necessarily included in a comprehensive plan. It's not focused, primarily on physical development, but it was so important to so many people. We wanted to make sure to include that within the plan. Thinking about public safety in terms of design and the physical spaces, and how do we impact public safety, both in terms of preventing anything from happening, as well as kind of minimizing any issues. And then finally, the last topic area is inclusive economy. And here, maybe the sleeper topic here was freight movement. So, thinking about freight movement wasn't necessarily that exciting to people until we had the tragedy with the Key Bridge. And then all of a sudden, people realized how important it was. And so we have, recommendations included in the plan related to freight movement. This plan does not stand alone. This plan really serves as kind of a bringing together of many plans across the city. And so the ones listed here are just a sample. There's a larger list within the plan itself, but we're bringing together all of these plans, including ones that are still under development, such as the BCRP playbook, and ones that are just launching, such as the comprehensive housing plan. So that's the summary of the plan itself. I wanted to just briefly talk a little bit about the public comment period, and then I'll wrap up and we can get to the discussion. We released the draft of the plan on May 30th and kicked off a 60-day comment period. We had a briefing session hosted by the commission, the Planning Commission, as well as the Sustainability Commission. We had open houses that we held during that 60-day comment period, as well as a listening session, and we received, as I mentioned, over 2,000 comments. So most of the comments came through Conveo, where people had an opportunity to comment, on the plan itself online. We also made sure that we were capturing the comments that we received from the open house, and we put those in Conveo because Conveo allows people to see each other's comments and respond to everyone's comments. We did get some comments via email, and then we also got comments, as I mentioned, from the state. So the state did a pretty thorough review and provided us comments on the plan. And then we separately had the land use map available for people to review and comment on. And so we got several hundred comments on the land use map as well. So this just breaks down kind of an analysis of the comments from Conveo. So you can see that we did get a lot of comments that were really observations. We got a fair amount of positive feedback where people were saying, I really like this. So that was great to hear. And then we got some more significant comments and suggestions as well. In addition to putting the plan out for the general public, we wanted to make sure that we were reaching audiences that maybe wouldn't engaged through Conveo, and so we conducted a super reviewer process. And so we had 39 people apply and were accepted in the super reviewer process so that we can make sure that we got comments from renters and owners and legacy residents, new residents, BIPOC residents, immigrant community. Like, we really wanted to make sure that we were reaching a cross-section of the city. And so we got both high-level comments from the super reviewers as well as detailed comments. We asked super reviewers about how accessible the plan was, how easy it was to understand. We got feedback from them on what we needed to clarify, and also specific comments for edits. This is a summary of the review that was done by the State Department of Planning. So they went through and made sure that we meet all of the required elements. They did flag that we were missing a water resources element, and so that has been added. They also flagged that we were missing a growth tier map, and so we've added that as well. So both of those are now available in the appendices. They did conclude that we had met the requirements for the housing element and the other elements that are required. In addition to the State Department of Planning, it was reviewed by several other state agencies, and so we have made revisions based on their comments as well. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah. Again, you have done an incredible job leading this effort, along with the entire planning team that's helped you. Much applause for everything that you've done. It's been a long road. So the Planning Commission has had an opportunity to review and comment on this, so let's really just focus on public input. That's what this meeting is about. So what I'd like to do is ask if there's anybody here who would like to come up. Please come up to the microphone and provide us your thoughts, comments, input, and we'll move through here. And then we have a number of people who are online. We'll provide them an opportunity to comment as well. So if you'd like to come up, please come on up. Tell us who you are.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for
You bet.
indulging me. Okay.
So the first things I abbreviate, tell me, my name is San Yu. I live at 101 East 32nd Street. I have worked at Johns Hopkins as a research for over 20 years. Recently, some developers going to build a big, huge monster building in front of my house, which only is 15 feet.
I'm going to ask him to pull up the part.
If I can, real quickly, this is about the comprehensive plan.
I would
I-
just show
Okay.
the picture, then everybody knows what's happening. Please.
Okay. I remember you very, very clearly, you and your, I don't know if this is your colleague, related or what, but I remember you both from the public. Okay.
When I got canceled, he took me to the Hopkins emergency. Stay with me.
Okay, first off, you need to go back to the microphone. Secondly, I'm going to allow you to speak on this, but very, very briefly, because
yes.
this is a specific development issue, and we're talking about the comprehensive plan. Here.
Since the time is stressful, I just abbreviate. The first thing is, my house is in abnormal, unique location. Is on the edge of half grown. The vehicle and the truck coming to the very narrow street are forced to hit my property because the street only 15 feet, one car wide. One car just from here to here is 1 car wide. That's why I constantly hit my house.
Back to the
Fence,
microphone.
hit my fence wall. The window, I have to change. I have to change all the window because the window destroyed. Then until right now, even I change the new window. I even so scared I use picture window, but still the truck hit my house. I live like no free. I cannot, as a normal person, I cannot freely open window because the window constantly destroyed. I have to buy a brand new window, but right now still is hit by, because the street is extremely narrow, hit the window. Is because it's right now the developer want to build a new building, which is 90 feet high. It's 15 feet, 1 car distance from my house. When I go to the Martin Luther King, I see the house is totally dark. I feel very sad for myself. I will have the same bad situation as this house. I talked to the developer. I said, have you realized the Martin Luther King has the same consequence as me, has no son. And very important things. I have 2 cancer and got a recurrence. Then the doctor told me, because you lost after surgery, I have surgery. After surgery, I lost my organ. I don't have any metabolism. I rely on the sun. But the developer right now totally take my son, confiscate my son away. I have no son. The very important is the developer, of course, they want to make money, but the geography limit, only 15 feet. How you develop? I asked them, how you develop? The geography already limit you develop. How you do that? Then right now, the developer cost me just living like the jail. I living like, because my house perpetual shadow every day without sun. Because the 90 feet, 15 feet in front of my house, I totally lost the sun. I told them, then another thing is because only my house is unique. It's 15 feet from proposal building, from massive monstrosity, 15 feet. But the rest of my house is 80 feet. Only my house, because the geography limit the developer. Only 15 feet. I talk to them. They know. They're very important. They say, we come to your house. We install the light fixture in your house. I say, I need a sun. I not need a light. I have light in my house. I need is sun because the doctor emphasis, I don't have organ. I need the sun to metabolism my survival. the last sentence, last paragraph. I strongly object this develop because I told them it's not a money issue. It's my life. I said, please, it's my life. I told the developer again, it's not money, it's my life. I lost my life. When I'm the currency twice, I have cancer twice. Right now, I still have cancer nodule in my lung. 5. Every 4 months, I have to go Hopkins to see the CT by doctor because they worry I have recurrence again. I just, dear Commissioner, I really have this kind of difficulty. They clearly know. They also told me when they told me, oh, your house, yes, we know. Your house is abnormal, unique location. We know. I said, come on, why you still do? Because they want money. You cannot put somebody's life in danger. You think about only money. I told them,
Ma'am,
yeah,
I know we've talked about this before at a prior planning commission meeting, and the commission made a decision at that time and passed it on. And I feel terrible for
it's
some of them.
terrible.
Yeah.
Only 15 feet. Then I told them, they tried to give me money. I said, please, it's not a money issue. They want to give me money.
And
I say, no, otherwise everybody wants money. For instance, they give me money, say, oh, it's money, I take. I said, right now it's my survival issue. I don't have metabolism organ. How do I survive without my organ, without the sun? Thank you, I just don't want to bother you so much time. I just most main important issue.
I appreciate the fact that you and your son have come here to speak with us tonight.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, this is not the forum for that particular discussion. However, I think, this is being recorded. And obviously, I hope the best for you, for your son, for your health, first and foremost, and for a resolution to this. But unfortunately, it is out of the hands of this planning commission to do anything. Regrettably. So I thank you. I know that's very hollow. I'm probably not what you're looking for, but I really can't offer anything more. And I apologize.
Because you know why today I come here? Last time I come here because I'm so stressful. That's my first time in the public. I'm so stressed. Many points I didn't express clearly. But after I come home, I think about it. I say, so many important points. Why didn't? Of course, I understand why so many commissioners say, oh, you don't, say no. That's why special come here, I want to emphasize.
And I appreciate that. And
difficult situation.
you did very clearly articulate to us the concerns that you were experiencing and the things that were happening to you at our last planning commission hearing on the subject. And I appreciate, again, you coming back down to express those. But unfortunately, this commission doesn't have anything to do with that at this point in time. So I'm sorry that I can't provide you anything more. If I remember correctly, the last time we were here, there was a city council bill.
Yes,
There was a planning and development amendment which had to go back before the city council. And I believe I told you and your son that, you should go and be at the city council hearing. I hope you were able to do that and impress upon the city council what you're experiencing. But unfortunately, we don't make that decision.
Oh, only it's 15 feet. How developed in 15 feet? They know it's 50 feet.
I don't want to be shallow, and I sure don't want to hurt you, but 15 feet is not an uncommon situation in the urban area.
He knows. Developer know you are abnormal, unique location.
Yeah. Again, I thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
And thank you again for coming down. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak regarding the comprehensive plan? Ms. Floyd, are you coming up?
Yes, I am.
Great.
And I'm going to say I'm actually going to keep this on this time. I've taken it off in the past and made a decision that I don't do that anymore based on situations. So I apologize for that. But as long as you can hear me, we'll be okay.
No reason to apologize, and we can hear you fine.
fine,
But we need
okay.
to know who you are for the record.
Okay, my name is Joan Floyd, for the record. So I'm going to make an observation, and then I'm going to try to make a point. Take these off. As I look through the entire document, what occurs to me is that the main impact of this plan is somewhat soft-pedaled and perhaps even buried a bit. The land use map, the proposed land use map, with its categories, combined with the proposal for comprehensive rezoning every year, which is effectively political rezoning, as we know, every year, is great for development and for developers and real estate interests, but it's not good for residents and neighborhood stability. The master plan says it cares about residents. There's a lot of good things in there, but there is no stability if every year there's the prospect of requests to upzone, as an example, R7 and R8 row houses to higher density or even to commercial based on the land use map. That's just an example of what is proposed here. And one of my questions is, what's the process for informing people, individual owners, that this is actually what's being proposed? There's some very different elements here, including, of course, the annual comprehensive rezoning. What's the procedure for informing and explaining to residents, or owners, I should say, making sure they understand how this could affect them? So that partly gets to me the point I want to make, and I have some. Okay, my main point is, I believe at this time there's insufficient time to do this right. In 2 months, this city council term ends. There is insufficient time, in my view, to review this plan and the new land use map as it should be done with our elected representatives. This will be a rushed process, and it will not be fair, and it will not reflect the intentions of inclusiveness and equity that are expressed in the master plan. We're also in the final days, it's election season, we're in the final days of a campaign for a hugely consequential election. That's where the energy and attention is going right now, and it needs to continue going there. This master plan will not be able to receive the energy and attention it must have. Election results. Issues in this election currently include the red line, which is now part of the race for Senate, we learned this week. Also, the future size of the city council, which is a controversial ballot issue. Also, the future redevelopment of the Harbor Place area, another controversy that may still be a ballot issue. These are relevant, and I think the outcome should be known before a new master plan is reviewed and adopted. Now, another issue, outgoing city council. Several current city council members are not returning. Very soon, a new city council will be sworn in with new members. If this is a forward-looking plan, I believe the new members should be included in the review process. Pandemic impact. The entire process of developing this master plan has taken place during the COVID-19 crisis, which is still with us. People in the city are still prioritizing not getting sick and not spreading sickness to others. This has had an effect on how people can and do participate. It has depressed certain forms of participation, and it has increased other forms. All the more reason to make sure this next phase of review and adoption is not rushed. Now, there are some issues that I find surprising to me that they are either not in the plan or they are don't seem to be sufficiently addressed in the plan. But first, I'm going to give you what I believe, I'll give you a correction of one thing. On page 209, there's a crime rate statement, but it compares Baltimore with Maryland cities. Baltimore is effectively the 24th county, so it should be compared with the 23 counties. Should not be.
Also a city, Ms. Floyd, as you know.
It's,
It's a municipality and a county.
I stand by my statement. It should be compared with the 23 counties.
Okay?
That's what I'm telling you, and I believe this is an error.
But let's recognize that Baltimore City is both a county and a city. Do you agree to that?
It's considered as a county just about everywhere, so I don't, that's,
Legally, it's considered a county and a city.
okay, but why are we even arguing about this? I said what I said.
Okay.
It'll either fall on deaf ears or somebody will do something about it.
Trying to
I'd like to
recognize
move
whether or
on.
not you accept the fact that it's considered a county and a city.
I don't have in my head an answer for that right now because I consider it to be like a county.
Okay.
It's it's 24th jurisdiction in the state of Maryland. So, no, I don't think you don't, the cities that are mentioned are all within counties. They're all within counties.
I'm sorry, please continue on.
Yeah,
Let's not
thank you.
harp on that point.
Okay. Special taxing districts. If special taxing districts continue to be added to the city, and if the original community benefits districts are allowed to continue to collect and spend public money after 30 years, then why are they not mentioned in the master plan when it talks about crime and grime ongoing efforts, for instance? I don't understand that. Now, I'm going to say it. The prospect of having a private armed police force begin patrolling our streets is not mentioned, is not thought about in the plan. One of the city's biggest and most influential owners of real estate, Johns Hopkins University, is planning to do just that. There's been absolutely no scrutiny of this plan on a city government level. There's no awareness or understanding of exactly where they expect to patrol or what it all means. In fact, Hopkins President Daniels himself has acknowledged that it's an experiment. Okay? Now, on the subject of office and retail, or commercial, the change in demand for bricks and mortar office and retail land use was already happening, and then the pandemic hit. The plan talks a lot about retail development, I noticed, but not about the land use implications of this, in this changed and changing environment that we're in. It's a very different land use environment for office and retail. Pandemic effect. COVID-19 has changed so many things permanently, and it is not over. The master plan should really not suggest that it is. There are places where it seems to suggest that. I think I would like if people would take another look at that. And maybe perhaps the possibility of a new pandemic and planning for its potential impacts and resiliency should be recognized, perhaps. Gentrification. So much of the development in the past 20 years has been a direct encouragement of gentrification. And yet this reality and its impact on neighborhoods and residents and on the availability of traditional affordable housing is absent, from what I can tell. It's notably absent. On the subject of density, the new zoning code in 2017 greatly increased residential densities in many areas and opened up other areas to residential for the first time in decades. It seems very strange to me not to see this acknowledged in the plan, given that the plan acknowledges loss of population, but recommends increased density. That seems to be a disconnect there. Couple more just quick things. I was looking for protection of streams and wildlife habitat. Now, I understand there's an issue about a water resources element, but I just want to say protection of our streams and wildlife habitat. I don't see it in the plan. Most of the text is just about the tree canopy, which is it's one part of what we get from our trees. We need more legislative protection, not less, on that issue, and I was really hoping to see that in the plan. Energy, solar energy, electrification, getting off of natural gas, I didn't see anything about that in the plan. Preservation of existing public assets and public land. There is constant pressure to dispose of public resources, public lands. Are we not planning for retention of assets? I didn't even see an expression of intent to actually hold on to existing parkland. I was looking for that. I didn't actually see that. One last thing. This is something that makes me very sad. This master plan, I was looking for what this master plan said about children. This master plan hardly says anything about children. To me, this is incredibly sad. Have we given up on having a city for children to thrive in? These are my comments right now.
Have you provided these comments via the webpage?
I have not, I missed the deadline yesterday, or 2 days ago to put
Do you
it on.
you have your written summary?
No, it's got scratching all over it.
Okay.
I mean, if somebody wants me to try to reproduce it somehow, I can try to do that.
Mr. Tiso?
By virtue of the voice to text, as part of the recording, we should have the automatic transcript that I'm watching fly by, so we have basically what she said in text form.
Thank you very much.
Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Ms. Lloyd. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Yes. If you're going to speak about the comprehensive plan.
I am going to speak about the
Okay,
concept plan.
great.
I'm going to speak about the trains. I'm going to speak about the rail lines. At first I didn't understand. My name is Raymond Yu. I know many of you here. Many of you know me. Maybe many of you feel that I'm the cause of your being here. I apologize for that. Maybe I give myself too much credit if that's not the case. But
What are your thoughts on the comprehensive plan?
my thoughts on the comprehensive plan are this. There was a fire in Baltimore, I think in like 1900, maybe like early 1800s. And I think from that point on, you had like a bare empty city that you just built on from scratch. The maps I'm looking at right now appear to be, and this took me a long time to realize, it took me a lot of staring, but I'm like, oh, excuse me. This is a map from like before the fire, it appears to me. And so we have a train line, like an old style rickshaw-esque thing, going up Cloman, which I guess is like the alley here. I see, and I'm talking about a specific area of the city where you
Are you looking at a
reproduce.
map in the plan, or what map are you looking at?
I'm looking at a map from the. Eric, what is this?
This is Westport.
Yeah.
Like a current,
Yeah.
Aerial.
One of the some recent files from Westport.
Oh, it is. My bad. I wonder what the industrial zoning means, like the I category. Why do we use that then?
I'm sorry, this is on the comprehensive plan. This
Right.
is in the zoning.
I know, but on the comprehensive plan. Why is industrial is an antiquated,
It's not,
term.
there's still plenty of industrial areas
Sure, it might come.
in Baltimore City.
Why do we have a multitude of industrial uses in like the
Thank
city
you.
itself where it's not
If
industrial?
you look at the land use plan, the industrialized areas are,
It's a legitimate question. Like, why do we call it industrial as opposed to?
As
because there's
more-
still industrial
Well,
uses there.
As opposed to, what do you?
like
what
we're not
would you
doing
propose
steel
to call-
forging or
Okay.
something like that. But
What do you got here?
Thank you.
Okay, there's no, thank you. Okay, thank you.
It seemed, it's clever that if the goal was to try to break it down to the bare bones of like, what the infrastructure of Baltimore really consists of, what it needs, if you're out in the West and you have to, build it from scratch. Okay, I got the rail lines here, like Sim City. I got to, get water from here to here, blah, blah, blah. The rest of it is aesthetic, and we can start not for it. That's what it, and I mean, it's one way to go. It requires, you guys put a lot of work into this from the beginning, and it's going to require a lot more work from here on out. So I guess I just have to say thank you for it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
It's built on the right bones.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on the subject? Seeing none, Eric, do you want to turn to the online participants and see if anybody would like to speak?
Sure, we can. So for anybody who is following us from online, feel free if you'd like to be heard to
We have questions, though. Is this the end of the public?
No. I'm sorry, are there people in here who would like to speak?
I wasn't sure if this was just for observations or questions.
No, you can ask questions too, but let's go,
Yeah.
we won't forget you.
Okay, so for those that may be watching from home, if you would like to be heard, please use the raise hand feature. We'll give you a few seconds and we'll go from there. If there are any that wish to speak from the online meeting. All right, I am not seeing any at the moment, so why don't we take someone else that's in the room, and if hands pop up, we'll take them in turn.
Okay, hello, my name is Maren Wren. I'm a resident of Cherry Hill, and I just moved to Baltimore City last January, so I really just have questions because I am very new to the city. So since this is a comprehensive plan and it's more of like a groundwork for policy changes, what does that mean for the city? Is it like, this is kind of like the Supreme Court where it's like, this is what we suggest, and on a, I don't know, regional basis, you can decide on what to do, or how does the plan move in action?
I'll take it. So the comprehensive plan, just to be clear, is a state mandated plan every decade after the census, right? So in general, it's a 10-year look ahead, right? It's sort of, you're trying to anticipate where the city's going, what the issues will be over the next decade. In most traditional plans, like in a suburban area, one of the key issues is where is there new growth, right? That's the old cornfields or green fields to development issue. In a built-up urban area, it's often a discussion about where reconstruction or redevelopment might occur. But in general, the state mandates are not very specific, so it can go everything from a strategic plan for the city in sort of a business sense, that's the way we did the last one, to this is a more traditional one, looking at where we think growth might occur in the future. There's a lot more than that in this plan. If you've read it, you've seen that we took a lot of input, but that's a very simplistic explanation of how it's being used.
There's also, it's really important to note that for, I believe, the first time in any of the documentation I've seen, this does include a land use map, which identifies, existing land uses and proposed land uses, as Sarah went through, identifying where the city wants to focus its dollars and where it's suggesting that developers focus. That map is really, really important for a variety of reasons. Most notably, like where we should be investing our funds. Transit-oriented development makes perfect sense. But it's also really, really important when we talk about potential rezonings, because heretofore, one of the criteria that this commission has to evaluate in making our recommendation back to City Council is whether or not the proposed zoning modification is consistent with the land use plan or the master plan for the city. Heretofore, we really never had anything to guide us on that. We didn't know whether or not there really was no land use plan. Now there is. And so when an applicant, a property owner comes in and asks for what we call piecemeal rezoning, then we now have something to look at and say, it's not consistent with the master plan. Therefore, we would not recommend approving this rezoning. So it's going to be very, very helpful in that regard, as well as, that land use plan really does establish some very broad visions. I think, the team did a great job in terms of focusing on the TOD, the corridors, the investment areas and whatnot. So that's very new, and I think it's probably in my opinion, as a planner, it's one of the most important elements of the plan.
Okay, so it's sorry, I just want to be clear on what it is. So this is for guidance and accountability for the changes that occur within the city throughout this period?
And hopefully to guide them. I mean, I think one of the things, if you read the mayor's introduction of this, it recognizes that this goes beyond his administration, potentially. I mean, it's not for the next 4 years. Mm-hmm. It's for the next 10 years, mm-hmm. which may be multiple administrations. And so it provides consistency for that 10-year period.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Did we miss anything, Sarah? Is there anyone online who would like to?
I'm not seeing any hands. So again, any call for folks from at home, you can either drop your comments in the chat for me to read, or if you'd like to use the raise hand feature, we can unmute you and let you speak.
Okay, well, based on that,
I'm sorry, we do have one
okay.
question from Derek Moore, who's asking, why is the Upton, let me increase the size of the screen, why is the Upton subway station not rezoned for TOD?
So again, this is not a zoning map.
Well, maybe there's a
It's
TOD
a land
designation.
use
I don't know if
plan.
that's, and there's,
So the question is whether or not there's a TOD designation on the land use plan for the Upton. And I'm looking at Sarah, who seems to be looking at her computer very,
Upton what?
The subway station.
Oh,
But it would be in the TOD overlay.
So there is a
Well, it is
page
on the
2
overlay.
to the general land use map, which was the one that had those dots on them. So it should be one of those. We don't happen to have that in front of us at the moment, but it would call for the eligibility for TOD if you're in one of those circles. It's kind of like, yep, it's a page 2. So that if you're in one of those circles, even though you're colored something else on the general land use plan, these circles make you eligible for TOD.
I don't think this is being shared with the.
Oh, yeah, the slides are now not, but, okay.
so
I think that answers.
suffice it to say, we'll double check and make sure that it is, if for some reason it's not. And it is it included, Sarah?
They're not labeled, so I can't tell, but I think so, but we'll double check.
Yep, we will double check.
Intent was every heavy rail, light rail, red line, and some BRT.
Yep.
well, I guess, yeah, I mean, on top of this, I guess also the land use map, if it is or is not, I guess it's something to consider if the land use designation in their map is pink for TOD.
That's true.
So we didn't get into this level of detail in the land use map specifically around TOD. So this overlay sort of portends a future TOD strategy working.
Which I'm fine with, I guess, but so the existing, on the land use map, the things that are mapped TOD now, are they only the things that are zoned
Just a little
TOD today?
There's, I think pink is TOD.
Yep, pink is TOD.
So
And
you
it
have it up
is-
here and you have it here. So you do have some
Yep.
by the Upton, yes. It's not quite as much as this is calling for. This is-
A quarter mile or a third of a mile, right?
Right, I mean, the reality of this land use plan is it's much more block by block than the more general graphic that's shown here. I think one of the things that I had recommended, which I appreciate why you've gone where you've gone, is this is kind of the foundation, and then these overlays come in and help inform this. As opposed to trying to put all of that on this, it would get very, very muddy. So having, a consistent base land use plan with these overlays is, I think, very helpful. So we're looking at the land use map here, and it appears that the Upton has been designated as a transit-oriented development, but we will definitely make sure.
And I did get his email, so we can double check to make sure that we answer that correctly. There's also a comment here from Sue Hastings. I live in the proposed Hartford Road Overlay District, and before the bill was introduced, it was shown in the land use map, yet much of the plan seems to contradict it and is not included in any of the presentation as focus areas. So that is referring to a current bill that is in process, and we think it does reflect that. You can see the corridor there.
I think what I took her to say was, it was showing up in the land use plan before the bill was introduced. Is that what she said?
Maybe, and then, yeah, she's sending a clarifying question. Will it still be included if the bill is not adopted? The answer would be yes, if the plan here today is not changed.
All right, but the question, I think, I don't want to make questions up, but it's like, okay, we're showing the Hartford Road corridor as a mixed-use, predominantly pedestrian-oriented commercial with residential higher density backing that, then bleeding out into lower density, medium density and then lower density. I guess the question is if that bill is not adopted by the city council, will that land use designation, do we still believe that land use designation is appropriate for the Hartford Road corridor?
I believe the answer is yes. I defer to the community planner. I will note that the overlay zone bill has additional controls in it that will not be affected purely by any rezoning that may result from this plan. So they're not a one-to-one translation. And if we got something wrong, Sue, feel free to shoot me an email and we'll square that with you later.
That particular corridor is absolutely consistent with the other recommendations in our Baltimore plan in terms of focusing on our commercial corridors. I mean, Hartford Road is currently an existing commercial corridor, and one of the goals is to really focus on them. So it makes sense regardless of what happens with the bill.
Right. I think what Mr. Kisa means to say is it consistent with what Mr. Ryer dreamed up in 1983 of those two stretches of St. Paul Street?
Okay.
Will that be consistent?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we've given you an opportunity.
Well, the old promises and memorandum of understanding be honored under the new zone.
Okay. Thank you.
And it looks like we do have a hand up from Barbara Samuels. I'm going to click the button so you can unmute yourself.
Any luck?
And you're going to have to press unmute from your side. And I'm not seeing her come off of mute. And I can't override that from my end. So Ms. Samuels, if you can't manage to get yourself unmuted, if you would please just add, oh, it won't let you unmute, okay. Sorry about that, not sure how to fix that at this point. The letter we received from you is in the Planning Commission's packet. They do have that available to them. Hopefully that helps.
She can call me.
Okay. Any other hands, questions, comments?
I don't see any other hands, though I'm still trying to hit the unmute to allow it from our end, which doesn't look like it's working, but I'm not seeing any other hands raised. There's another question that just popped in. What are the plans for coordination with the plan and the inclusionary housing legislation that was signed by the mayor in January of this year?
Sarah, you want to?
Just briefly, one of the updates that we made since the draft was released was to include a reference to the inclusionary housing legislation. So that's incorporated into the master plan.
So the other thing that I would say is that it's important to remember that a comprehensive plan is a general guide, not necessarily specific policy, and that ideally the general guide helps inform, future policy. It takes into account policy decisions that have been made up to here, and it will inform future policy decisions. So if it doesn't necessarily reference the Affordable Housing Act as it's currently in effect, then ideally it referenced the need for affordable housing, which it does, and it's a guide. It's not a specific action.
And it looks like Ms. Samuels was able to get unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I've got a cold, so my voice may cut in or out, but, whenever a poll is done, affordable housing and housing affordability and the housing shortage usually ranks second or third on the concerns of city residents right after public safety. And I think regardless of what you may have gotten in the way of feedback from the state, which I hope you will make public, it's pretty clear that this plan is lacking a coherent focus on housing. I acknowledge that there are sections that come from DHCD, which, however, mainly deal with community development, not with housing. And those two, a lot of people conflate those two things. But in fact, in some cases, they can be in tension with each other, as well as working to complement each other. And so I think, knowing the intent of the amendments to the state law that our then Delegate Brooke Learman introduced to get the housing element requirement and to get the requirement of a affirmatively furthering fair housing strategy incorporated into state law. I think it's pretty clear that that this plan does not pull any of the mentions of housing that are scattered around the report together in any kind of coherent way. And it also overlooks and leaves out some important things. Somebody just mentioned inclusionary housing. And while the current version adds one isolated paragraph, the prior version didn't mention inclusionary housing at all, even though the law passed before that draft was released. And that bill is probably the most significant change that has occurred, but certainly has the potential to be the most significant since the 2006 comprehensive plan. So the fact that it is not considered and woven into this plan, I think suggests that housing was largely overlooked. And I understand that in the sense that there's some good stuff in this plan, largely the things that are mostly in the purview of the planning department staff. Things that are in the purview of DHCD or the health department or some other department, Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, not so much. So inclusionary housing is one example of that. But probably the most egregious thing that sticks out is that there's no mention of affirmatively furthering fair housing in the plan at all. In fact, I don't think the words fair housing ever appear in the plan. And this is despite the fact that the city for several, maybe as much as 2 decades, has been participating with the Baltimore Metropolitan Council in developing a regional plan for analysis of fair housing and a plan for affirmatively furthering fair housing, the most recent one in 2020, with all kinds of maps and charts and analysis that really would have been beneficial to include in this plan. And that's being updated as we speak for 2025 with some new analysis already available. So while we talk about the history in the way of background and of the city, including, racism and redlining and exclusion, there's really no focus anywhere in this plan at all on remedies for that. And that was the whole purpose of adding the affirmatively furthering fair housing strategy into state law. So I don't know how the state says that this plan complies, but regardless of that, it seems like a real blind spot that the city has. Regardless, the city shouldn't have to be required by the state to have a fair housing strategy.
So I call your attention, if I can, real quickly. I don't know whether or not you've had a chance to review the document in full, but on page 139, it has a complete section on affordable housing. It talks about an overview from the housing affordability in Baltimore City, beginning in rent burden and mortgage burden and affordability in the region. It then goes into why does affordable housing matter? And it talks about current efforts in terms of production and preservation, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and inclusionary housing.
I mean,
I'm sorry, if I can finish, please. And then it has 5 goals that are clearly articulated that talk about affordable housing. And I think Director Ryer would like to speak about what DACD is doing.
Well, and also then page 72 specifically mentions affirmatively furthering fair housing, and then page 37 has the BMC plan for 2025 with the regional fair housing analysis reference as well.
Well, and it is complete. The Department of Housing Community Development just kicked off their, probably will be a 12-month housing planning process Our team, Sarah in particular, worked really hard to try to align the two efforts, but we couldn't do it on our deadline we have with the state. I think the housing department will take another 12 months or so to complete their plan, but hopefully that will begin to address in a more holistic way some of the issues being raised.
Yeah, I mean, I read the public comment draft and commented via Convejo pretty extensively on that. So I'm pretty familiar with that, and I have just had a chance to scroll through and read the current version, and I have seen that in response to comments, some of that has been added, but it's not what amounts to a comprehensive strategy that includes, what HABC is doing, the mayor's office of homeless services, other groups like the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership, and so on. And I think it's good that DHCD is doing a comprehensive housing plan. It's something that advocates asked them to back in the days, going, back to Commissioner Graziano. It's something that 2 years ago, we were told by the current housing commissioner that they were going to do. And so the fact that it didn't get done in time to meet the deadline for the comprehensive plan, to inform the comprehensive master plan, and to be there for the public to comment on, is a big miss and an unnecessary one. And I'm not saying that the planning department was remiss in that. It perhaps was the housing department that was remiss in that, but the city was remiss in that. A couple of other areas that are pretty much missing from the plan that are important. One of them that I was going to mention, and I'm glad Ms. Floyd did, was the inattention to children. I was going to put it a little bit differently, in that there really is no focus in here on retaining families and creating the built environment, both in terms of housing and parks and other amenities, that are the kinds of things that would persuade the young people who are moving into all these one-bedroom and studio apartments to stay after they form families and start having children. And you can't really have a healthy city if you can't retain families. Children are sort of the bellwether for whether you have a healthy city. You also can't grow if you're not doing that, because while you're increasing households, you're not increasing population. You're still having population loss. And I know that the Downtown Partnership's most recent Zimmerman-Vogt study, which I think is more recent than the 2020 study that Live Baltimore did, commented on that in saying that there is a demand, but there's no product for families to stay in the city. And in contrast with that, the demand for the studio and one bedrooms is probably plateauing and tapping out. So that's one area that I think really any city should have as really a prime focus, a prime goal, a prime theme, as it is in a master plan. And the other area that I would urge you to start thinking about, at least, I mentioned that the treatment of health is a little bit lacking in here. I realize that there is, it addresses disparities in heat-related health adverse impacts, but one of the most salient pieces of data about our city is that we have differences in life expectancy from neighborhood to neighborhood of 20 years. like between Harlem Park and Roland Park. And that is not something we should just accept. That is something that we should have a strategy to work on. And frankly, if we addressed that one metric, we would probably solve 99% of our other problems, because the things that you would need to do to eliminate that disparity in life expectancy would take care of those other problems. Life expectancy, all the other disparities roll up into the disparity in life expectancy. And so I would have liked to have seen that addressed in a comprehensive way, in a comprehensive master plan, and look beyond, a few narrow areas like heat islands or food access. But perhaps that's something that we can work on going forward in the future. So I guess I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much for your comments and continued participation. Is there anyone else, Eric? Give it one more minute.
To, I guess, defend on what Ms. Floyd mentioned, there was no mention of gentrification, but I mean, I guess some control effing. I see displacement mentioned 15 times in the plan. So there is, I mean, that in my mind is that the thing we are guarding against with gentrification is the displacement impacts when a neighborhood get more investment. And then even on retaining families, I guess I see retain 17 times, so that may not always be about retaining families, it may also be retaining other things, but.
So part of the issue with any comprehensive plan is, how much can it include? This document, I sat down with Sarah at length and we talked about, my comments to the plan, and I said, we got to shorten this up. We got to shorten this up. We got to shorten this up, because who's going to read 400 pages? What's real about this? Things like including a comprehensive housing plan would be great, but there's a lot of people in here who wouldn't necessarily focus on that. But that's the Department of Housing and Community Development's role. And ideally in 4 years, when we're updating this, which we've promised we're going to do every 4 years, when their plan is done, you're going to review this, you said, every 4 years. The map, the land use map, okay. So when we're reviewing this every 10 years, that, we'll be informed. One of my personal interests is recreation and parks, and Rec and Parks has gone through a rather extensive master planning process. And all of the findings of that can't be included in this comprehensive plan. We've recognized that there are certain things that, we want to accomplish, but we're going to have to lean on Rec and Parks master plan and DHCD's master plan and the Mayor's Office of Health master, guidance and policies and so forth. That's the kind of the nature of it. If we were to roll all those up into one plan, this thing would be untenable. It'd be 1,000 pages and nobody would read any of it. So I think you've done an excellent job. Of course, there's always room for improvement in everything we do, but I think you've done an excellent job. Is there anybody else? All right, seeing as there's no one else, I will close the public input session. I thank you all again for your participation. This will be brought up at the October 10th Planning Commission meeting. I would assume that we're going to have a public hearing on it at that point, or is it going to be on the consent agenda?
Typically, it's on the live session
Okay.
as our reporting back what, if anything, was changed, and then that'll be the final up-down vote. And it's also, we are going to be releasing the agenda shortly for the October 10th, so it is at least tentatively listed at the 4 o'clock time slot.
Okay.
So for any who may be interested to watch it, do that. There will also be a hybrid session for that as well if you're not able to come to the office.
So I don't know if everybody did not hear that. It will be on the October 10th Planning Commission agenda as a regular agenda item slotted at 4 p.m. So as part of that, there will be a presentation again, and then there will be questions and answers from the commission, and then it'll be opened up for public, additional public comment. At the close of that, the commission will be taking a vote, either affirmatively or against, making a recommendation back to city council. Unfortunately, I personally am not going to be here on the 10th, so I wanted to express my gratitude for you and all that you've done and all the planning department has done. I wholeheartedly endorse the plan. I think there are tremendous attributes to it, and I think the land use plan element is somewhat of a game changer for the city. So I thank you very much. And with that, we will close the public input session. Unless any other commissioners would like to say anything, I thank you all very much.